Howdy, howdy. We are live on another Friday night to kick off the hashtag TQIF Friday night lineup. We're going to start things with a live Tex-Trek podcast talking about this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy. And then later on, Starfleet Boy, our good friend, is going to have some late night fun on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. If anyone wants to catch that live stream, that'll follow this presentation. But I got Brian here with me, and we got another Star Trek show to talk about. We're going to switch gears from the 32nd century to the 24th. Brian, I think I'm ready to get started if you are.
Yep.
All right, well, let's start the show. I'm Fathery.
And I'm Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 172nd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new, and proud members of the Trek Sphere network. And tonight we are talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 6, Kobayashi, written by Aaron J. Waltke and directed by Alan Wan. Before we talk about that, though, I just want to remind everyone that we're going to have 5 weeks of Prodigy starting tonight, the first Star Trek episode of the new year of 2022, and that will run from this week until we get into early February. Then February 10th is actually the return of Star Trek Discovery, so if you're looking forward to more Discovery and hearing us discuss that, we'll be doing that weekly on Friday nights as well, and then hopefully we'll go into Picard and the other shows. Brian, before we get started with our topic, I did want to kind of share everyone my forecast of the year. This is how I think Paramount Plus might decide to release Star Trek that's coming in 2022. So if I could just real quick take a moment to, if you're watching the video of this, you'll actually see something on screen. But if everyone is just listening, this is just based on some of the things that they've said and my intuition. I am pretty confident they're not going to want to double up Discovery and Picard in February. I think they're going to end up pushing Picard, which was announced for season 2, to premiere in February. They haven't given an official exact date. I think they're just going to push that back because those are, the two big shows on Paramount Plus. They're not going to want to release them at the same time. So they've told us that Strange New Worlds should be ready in the spring, and that Lower Decks should come back around the same time as the last two seasons. So that means August, or first half of August. Yeah, so what I think will happen in 2022 is that we'll get we'll have these 5 episodes of Prodigy running from January 6th until February 3rd, followed by the remaining 6 episodes of Discovery Season 4 from February 10th to March 17th. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Then on March 24th, I think that's when they'll finally drop Picard, assuming they don't want like a gap between Discovery and Picard, if they're just going to keep the train rolling and have new Star Trek every week. So we know that'll be a 10-episode season, so that would mean Picard would run from March 24th until May 26th, and then Strange New Worlds, they've told us it's coming in the spring. That could come out on the following week, June 2nd. That's also going to be 10 episodes, so it would run until August 4th. So August 11th, that's around the time we're supposed to expect Star Trek Lower Decks, according to Mike McMahon. And that'll be 10 episodes, so that takes us from August 11th to October 13th. And if Lower Decks wraps on October 13th, that leaves just enough room in the year to get those 10 remaining Prodigy episodes they told us to expect. Season 1 episodes 11 through 20. Those could release from October 20th until December 22nd, which takes us right up to Christmas. And we know that they're saying the motion picture director's edition 4K will premiere on Paramount Plus sometime in December. So, hey, why not release that on Christmas? Give us Trekkies something to watch, that last week of the year. And that's how I'm just going to predict 2022 shaping out this year. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. I just wanted to have it on record. This is what I'm thinking. So we'll see how correct or incorrect I am. It might be fun to keep up with.
Yes, the Oracle has spoken.
But I admit now that things could easily change and get shifted around and moved, and who knows. But
we're not going to get the future we saw in All Good Things.
You'll just get something kind of close to it. The comm badge will have a silver back instead of gold. It's still kind of the same shape. But yeah, and then Picard season 3, they unfortunately had to shut down production. The news broke yesterday because of COVID outbreak. I don't know if you call it an outbreak, because it sounded like they were returning from their holiday hiatus, and the people they were testing them coming back to work, and there were 50 people tested positive, so they shut down production. But today, Terry Metalis tweeted that they are back up and running. So I think that we'll have Picard. That'll be the first Star Trek show of 2023. And then Strange New Worlds, it sounds like, is about to start production in about a month. So I think that'll be the next one. 2023, we'll probably get Picard season 3 early in the year, unless there's more delays. And then Strange New World season 2 in the spring of next year. And then we're also going to supposedly have that new film by the WandaVision director, Matt Shakman. So if they stick to the what their plans are now, I think they're going to be starting production on that in a couple of months, sometime around April, and according to what Paramount is saying, that will come out in December of 2023. That's the current release date they have planned. So, but yeah,
you mentioned comm badges, and something occurred to me that isn't really tied to this episode, but Prodigy in general. I think they missed a trick. I would have had all of the kids wearing their comm badges in funky, weird, wrong ways to begin with. And then as they get more Starfleet, they start wearing them more correctly, like Janeway does. Like have one who wears it on their sleeve, like the Romulan communicator, and another person, maybe have it turned 90 degrees. So it's like pointing sideways and looks kind of, rebellious. And,
yeah. Someone has it on the right side instead of the left side.
Yeah, maybe Rock Talk puts it on her forehead. They could have had a lot of fun with that, and instead everyone's wearing them correctly, right? Even the Medusan, right out of the gates.
So, well, there's some fun to be had with comm badges within this episode that I'm sure we will talk about in a moment. So let's just go ahead and I guess dive in to Kobayashi. It's funny, just a few weeks ago, I guess 2 months ago, I should say, we had an episode of Star Trek Discovery called Kobayashi Maru, and now we have an episode of Prodigy called Kobayashi. So,
is that why? Okay, I was wondering why they didn't just call this one Kobayashi Maru, but you're right. There was
the season 4 premiere of Disco.
Yeah, I mean, because it just felt weird to me that I didn't see why you would drop the Maru, that's ship, right? The Maru part translates as ship. I think it's ship. Kobayashi is the name.
One of the words means ship. I'm not sure which one, but
I think it's Maru is the ship
part.
But I could be wrong. Anyway, since they're on a ship for the whole episode, it felt weird you'd admit the ship part. But now I see they didn't. Having 2 episodes named Kobayashi Maru in production at the same time would probably be more confusing than anyone really wants to deal with. So,
Well, before we get into our own opinions on the episode, I just want to give a quick recap of it by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers. But the official synopsis reads: as Gwyn struggles to find her role aboard the USS Protostar, Dal tests his leadership skills in the newly discovered holodeck. So yeah, basically, Dal discovers the holodeck. Janeway gives them a tutorial on what it is, how it functions. He decides to take the Kobayashi Maru, which does not go well as it is intended. It's supposed to be a no-win scenario, and he does eventually end up learning a lesson from it. And we have a vehicle for some Star Trek Legacy cameos. At the same time, Gwyn and Zero and Janeway investigate the secrets of the Protostar, and we find out that a big reveal that this ship once belonged to a Captain Chakotay, and the mysteries around it kind of multiply. They don't really get reduced, but we end up with more questions than what we had to begin with. So, Brian, I'll let you go first. But just give us your opening statement and let us know your broad impression of the episode, and then we'll talk about it in more detail in a moment.
I thought this was a lot of fun. They are teasing the answers to the big questions that we've all had since episode 1. And the questions that probably people who don't know Star Trek who are watching the show hadn't even probably don't care about at all. But for those of us who are Star Trek fans, we want the answers. And it looks like we're finally going to at least start getting some next week. And that was nice to I went into this episode with me and my wife and my best friend, and we're all kind of like, I wish this was another Discovery. We're gonna have to watch Prodigy, and we all came out of it saying, okay, that was great. We have no regrets. That perfectly held its own, and we were quite happy with it at the end, even though right before we hit play, we were all complaining that it wasn't an episode of Discovery. So yeah, it landed well, a good episode. I don't know if we pushed things as far forward as we could have, but it's a nice character episode. Those bottle ones you do when you can't afford to do alien planets, so everyone stays on the ship and just angsts at each other for 40 minutes or 20 minutes in this case.
But we did see a bunch of locations in the holodeck, so that would have actually been difficult. Well, today I guess you could do it with CGI. You just CGI all those environments, but traditionally this would have been an expensive episode in live action.
Well, yes, I mean hiring all those big name actors to come back it would have been expensive.
Oh, not even that, but just like when they're jumping around to the different locations, that would have been hard to pull off, or expensive to pull off.
Yeah.
Or it would have been one of those kind of very green screeny looking uses of the holodeck.
Yeah, I mean, didn't they do one of those in they did a bunch of jumping in Disco season 1? They had
in Context is for Kings, when Lorca's giving the Context is for Kings speech, but that was the spore drive. Which I'm still not really sure exactly what happened there. Was Burnham being transported? Was it just like a display of other environments connected to the mycelium network? They were still figuring it out. But anything else?
Honestly, that was about it. I liked it a lot. I don't know it had there was a bit of a morality message in there, but it was very explicit at the end with the Spock. So I don't know if there's much point in
literally spells it out, but
yeah,
that's okay, I guess.
No, that's fine, especially for it's supposed to be it's literally a lesson that the kid is playing. It's a school lesson the kid's playing on the holodeck, so it should be pretty obvious at the end of the lesson what the message is. So.
Well, for me, one of my big takeaways from this episode is we have confirmation the show is keeping the promise that the producers have made that it will look and feel more Star Trek, more like traditional Star Trek or standard Star Trek, or however you want to describe that. But yeah, just it is definitely becoming more of a Star Trek vibing show the longer it goes on.
Yeah, this doesn't feel at all like Star Wars.
No,
Not
yeah, unlike the first
no
episode.
Yeah, no version. I mean, there were lingering bits of Star Wars all the way through, but not this episode does not feel like anything Star Wars would ever do.
It's kind of like a Trojan horse Star Trek. It's like a lot of Star Trek put in a Star Wars shaped Trojan horse. And it
Yes.
sneaks in with that first 2-part episode, and then I think it just gets more Trekky the more you watch. After
The
6
horse,
episodes, we've already seen that pattern.
yeah, the horse pops open and a third nacelle comes out, and boom,
Yep.
off we go.
But yeah, the memorable thing here, of course, is going to be the Kobayashi Maru simulation on the holodeck. All of that stuff, which was a lot of fun. You could make the argument that the show might have too much fun with that. I wasn't expecting to see and hear all those familiar faces and voices, though, and I had a overall good time with that. But a little, a few times, I thought the novelty was kind of wearing off before we got to the end. Sadly, I felt they might have overused some of the repurposed dialogue just a bit too much, but generally, no, that was a lot of fun. I did not expect that. And the most important thing, though, is that in addition to those holodeck sequences, all the stuff with Dal was very satisfying to me. You know, he's supposed to be kind of the annoying, snot-nosed, cocky little kid, and he's going to grow and mature over time. And so they are showing how they're going to develop him. Hopefully, he takes more steps forward, and we can actually explore more of that growth. And also the stuff going on in the B story with Gwyn and Janeway and Zero. I'm also pretty curious. What's the Diviner's mission? What's the original purpose of the ship? What does the Diviner want to use with it, and what will that purpose be? So moved the overall larger story arc along as well. But we can go ahead and get into our episode breakdown, where we're just going to take pretty much every beat from the episode and discuss it. And we're going to start at the very beginning with the opening of the episode, where the Protostar is seen exiting from Proto Warp or Proto Drive, whatever they want to call it. I think they might have used both terms at some point, but they have escaped from the Diviner, and the Protostar has ended up in the Gamma Quadrant. Jankum, Rocktalk, and Zero all want to go to the Federation and find sanctuary in Federation space, hoping they can, show up as refugees trying to escape the Diviner. But Dal's still suspicious of the Federation. He doesn't want to go. And Dal and Gwyn talk to each other in sickbay. A little conversation there, and we get the Janeway holodeck tutorial. Brian, what did you think of right off the bat? Finding out that this ship, we kind of thought they were going to be coming towards the Federation, but no, they actually went from the Delta Quadrant to the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah, I figured it was going to be some huge number. I mean, given the way warp speeds are usually quoted, even a few hundred light years would have been a fast engine. But yeah, 4,000, sure, why not?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it does allow. Given that this apparently is a matter of minutes later, apparently.
We don't know. We don't know the exact amount of time, but even if it had been 24 hours, that's still a long. I mean, it would take Voyager like a year to go, or I'm sorry, 4 years to go that far. So I think it was only like 20 minutes at the most, is what I think it probably was. But
yeah, I would, if I had just fired up a new drive that even the onboard expert Holo Janeway couldn't exactly explain what the heck this was, I would run it long enough to get away from the bad guys. Clearly, that's the number one goal. But I don't know if I would just sit there and keep the pedal to the metal for a long time without knowing what the heck was happening or how far it was going. So my assumption was that it was a matter, 10 minutes or something that they ran it before they said, okay, that's enough. Let's figure out what we just did. So, I do find I kind of want them to really address the issue of why is Dal the captain. I mean, they point out a self-appointed captain, and kind of like, yeah, that kind of, maybe the rest of the group kind of needs to either affirm that they're down with that, or affirm, or discuss why they're not down with that. Because at the moment he's just the captain because he's pushing everyone around. Um, so
Yeah, he's the only one who's going around calling himself the captain. So
yeah. Um, the the bit again, we've mentioned this before, but in any other TV show, Dahl's saying, "Oh no, we don't want to go to the Federation with their stolen ship. They might lock us. They'll probably just lock us up for stealing it." Actually, that would be the smart thing to do. In any other TV show, that would be the smart guy, and everyone else would be the not smart people who are looking for this panacea of El Dorado or whatever, and the cities of gold. And you're like, no, you're not going to find that. We need to be realists here, and stay focused on the situation instead of imagining the grass is greener. But of course, this is Star Trek, where the grass literally is greener in the Alpha Quadrant. So yeah, it's interesting the way that plays out, that he's wrong
right.
here, but only because on a metatextual level, we know things that the characters in the show do not know. So
Well, I actually heard the writer of this episode, Aaron Waltke, talk about. And he's also one of the main producers on this show. But I heard him talk about writing Dal in a recent interview where he kind of acknowledges some of the things you're bringing up. Where he says, "Yeah, this kid has always had to be kind of street smart and look out for himself, and be very self-reliant. And yeah, he's not used to trusting other people, or it makes sense why he wouldn't trust like a big organization like the Federation. I am under the assumption he's never had like a positive experience with any type of authority, so it's all going to be stuff that has to be discovered by him and learned by him. And I did like that when the other three kids are talking to him about how they want to go to the Federation, they do bring up like, well, you're kind of just like the self-appointed captain. We don't actually agree to following your orders, and they want to, they want to vote on it, and they're like, we outnumber you. That's when they want to look for Murph. When Dal's like, oh wait, where's Murph? And then we find out he's freezing in the holodeck, which is, as soon as I saw that, I knew he was on the holodeck. But because there was nowhere cold on that last planet they were on.
Yeah. But if you didn't know anything about Star Trek, you might not realize where this is going.
Yeah, it would have been confusing when they do that smash cut to poor little Murph looking like he's lost in a blizzard.
I think it was deliberately designed to be confusing. I don't think that was a case of them assuming. Right. I think they wanted to mess with the audience.
No, another Star Trek writer, Ron Moore, I actually heard him say something that I thought was really cool about writing television. And this is when he was working on Battlestar Galactica, but it can apply to any show. He said people always talk about how audiences are dumb and you have to write down to your audiences, and he says I don't believe that. I actually think like most viewers are pretty smart. Everyone's seen enough media that everyone's pretty savvy about story structure and can understand where things are going if it's too obvious. And the actual trick is not writing so that things are clear to the audience, but what he finds to be the bigger challenge is writing things that can confuse them for a little bit, and then you have the reveal and the satisfaction of when you actually can put the pieces together and you understand everything. So yeah, sometimes stories are supposed to confuse you for a little bit. We got our first look, right, at the Protostar sickbay. We hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, I mean,
it looks kind of similar to the brig set, though. Like it's all, or the mess hall, or the captain's quarters. It's all like there's hard metal floor. I really miss the Starfleet carpet in the captain's quarters and in the sick bay. Those are like the two places you need like that Starfleet carpet. I feel.
You don't want to be having to clean all those bodily fluids and blood
That's
out of
true.
the carpets. I can totally see sick bay. I mean, certainly it could be magic self-sterilizing carpet, I assume, in the future. But from a practical view, you probably want your floors to be as simple as possible in sick bay, so they're easy to clean. Um, I didn't even at first I wasn't sure if she was still in the brig. It was they didn't do a terribly good, at least in my impression of establishing shot. And I was like, what's going on? Where are we? And oh, she's not in the brig. Okay, she's not locked up. Okay, yeah. And that makes sense given what happened last episode. But I wasn't entirely clear what I was seeing. It's all the lights are off. I guess she's supposed to be all dark and depressed and moody because let's face it, she's in a very sucky place in life. The crew of the ship kind of hate her, maybe, and her dad
just
her.
Left her to die.
She's the last of her species. There's nobody else to call upon. She's at the mercy of these group of kids who are A, don't really like her much, and B, are clearly idiots. So,
well, they have to show us that she is sad, because then when we see her being sad, it reminds us like, oh yeah, she actually like feels bad about being a bad guy before, and now like she's gonna be a good guy. You know, keeping it pretty simple for the young audience, but they have the line of dialogue here that I liked, where she thanks Dal for, you know, coming back and rescuing her, pulling her out of those tentacles that were trying to devour her on the murder planet. And he says, yeah, Janeway wouldn't let us leave until we had everybody. But we later learned, no, it was actually his idea. He was the one who voiced, oh no, we got to go get her. And
yeah,
I think you actually talked about that when we covered that episode, Brian. You said, like, I would have liked to have seen the conversation where they decide, like, do we go get Gwyn or not? And then they decide to go do it. But I like the way that they played it here as kind of a, you know, mystery, and then we get, like, the payoff reveal later of, like, oh, no, actually, Dal did want to, it was his idea.
Yeah, I retract my complaint from before. It's clear that they knew what they were doing by omitting that scene. It wasn't just, oh, nobody wants to see this. It was, no, we can set up a more interesting bit of plot hijinks if we keep the audience in the dark the same way Gwyn is in the dark about the situation. So good for them. My respect for the writers has improved on that particular point. So
in the dark, when she's literally sitting in sickbay in the dark, but we see sickbay with the lights turned on later, although there's still not like a ton of detail in there.
Yeah.
And speaking of seeing parts of the ship, we see Jankum Pog find the holodeck, find Murph is in there, and Janeway gives both the audience who might be watching Star Trek for the first time and hearing the word holodeck for the first time, but also gives these characters their little holodeck tutorial. We get to see the holodeck set with the holograms turned off. Is really big on the small Starfleet ship has one of the biggest holodecks.
At first I thought that was dumb. That why would you have such a huge holodeck, given that they're pretty darn. We've seen that a smaller holodeck is still pretty darn good at fooling you into thinking it's a large.
Quark's
space.
holosuite is tiny.
Yeah, and they do all sorts of crazy stuff in there.
You put a whole casino in there.
Yeah, exactly. They fight the Battle of the Alamo in there. So they fly. So, but then I realized that works because you have a limited number of people, because you can just basically put a holographic, basically build a little hollow ball around each person. So even though they think they're half a mile apart, they're actually standing right next to each other, but the computer's putting fake holograms in between the two of them. But the more people you add, the trickier that's going to be. So the selling point of a big holodeck is you can put a lot of people on it. And if you've got a ship that's going to be out in the middle of nowhere and have a very limited number of resources, being able to just dial up a whatever you need on the holodeck, basically like a giant room replicator, like how they replicate the shuttles, actually could be pretty useful for a variety of other purposes and stuff. So I can see, if this ship is not supposed to swing by star bases very often, why you would want to invest in a big holodeck for a ship, just one big ass holodeck for a ship like this rather than several small ones. So I'm still looking for the day we get a floor plan of this ship, because if they keep adding big rooms in here, it's gonna run out of space real fast.
Yeah, we're starting to run out of Protostar real estate every time they show us a new room. It was cool seeing how it was cool seeing Janeway explain how you can use the holodeck for all these different recreational or educational or whatever type of scenarios, and even like, so I love that they put the Count Dracula thing in there. You can fight on Vulcan with Lepras, or you can go battle Count Dracula. Like those are all options. It's like, oh yeah, it made me think like, oh yeah, there's never been a Dracula holodeck adventure in Star Trek. It seems like something they would have done in the Berman era when they were using every other famous piece of fiction from the 1800s. And of course Jane Eyre as well. But
I believe vampires have shown up in the novels in some sort of sci-fi version of them, but I don't think.
well, in Star Trek, Brian, we have had salt vampires since
Yeah,
the very beginning,
yeah,
September 8th, 1966, when we started the whole thing.
yeah.
So,
I was thinking more of the Remans were heavily leaning on
oh yeah,
Nosferatu image, and they did want to steal Picard's
I,
blood.
I
So
think that was even in the script by John Logan.
yeah,
It described the characters as looking Nosferatu-esque.
yeah, it was. Uh, um, I did like. Well, I was amused by Janeway saying, "Oh, you could just play your stick and your ball and cone game,"
Yeah. Um,
and
well, I
um,
think she was doing that to tease him intentionally to make him
yeah, but given that
want
the
to do the
game
Kobayashi
works
Maru.
by giving you little almost mini orgasms, I was like, is that like the safe way to say go fuck yourself in a in a children's Star Trek show? Oh yeah, that little game that gives you orgasm. Yeah, just go play with that. That's all you're ready for, boys.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's actually how that game normally functions, or if that was just that one alien plot to take over the Enterprise in that Next Generation episode of the game. But uh,
Yeah,
it looks like it'd be kind of a boring game otherwise, though.
yeah. If it didn't give you hits of heroin every few every few minutes.
But let's get into that stuff after Dahlia does discover the Kobayashi Maru scenario. And Brian, do you want to tell us what happens uh, when Dal decides to test his mettle in the Kobayashi Maru
All right.
simulation?
Dahl's first attempt, the D bridge. Oh, let I. Am I reading the wrong bit? I'm reading the wrong
No,
bit.
that's right.
Okay, so Dahl has his first attempt at running the or playing testing the Kobayashi Maru, which is amusingly on the Enterprise D bridge, and with a hodgepodge of crews that feel like they came out of a Star Trek collectible card game. And he does not do well at all. And I mean, that should be no surprise to anyone, but at least Dahl finds a way to do not well on the Kobayashi Maru in a new and innovative way that we have not seen before. So, or even envisioned in many cases.
I love that his first reaction when he's like, "Oh, do any of you know these people on the Kobayashi Maru that are
Yeah.
sending us this distress call?" It's like, "Oh well, let's just okay, this is gonna be easy to win this. Let's just set a course and take off at warp and get the hell out of here."
Yeah.
But what made that even better is that he's playing with this recreation of these Star Trek heroes and how they all were outraged. It was like, oh yeah, these are actually pretty good replicas of Uhura, Odo, Spock, and Doctor Crusher, which was an interesting combination. The stuff is fun, but none of it makes a ton of sense. Like, Uhura's a communications officer, but she's at the ops station. Odo is not even part of Starfleet. He was basically like a cop on a space station. Very different from being tactical officer. And he's sitting at the helm station instead of at
Yeah.
the top of the horseshoe. But whatever. This really felt more like playing a video game. Brian, I've done the Kobayashi Maru in the Star Trek Bridge Crew VR game, or in Star Trek Online. So I felt like yeah, would just be like in a video game where you just pick whatever you have, like a character selection menu screen, like in Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or something. You
Yeah.
just pick the characters you want and put them wherever you want on the bridge.
I just unlocked Spock. I'm totally using
Yeah.
him. So, yeah.
Oh, you got to pay the DLC though to get him in the Monster Maroon skin.
Oh
You
yeah.
got you got to pay for that. You got to buy the DLC.
Otherwise, you just get 60 Spock. So,
Oh, that was another thing
um,
is the different eras. They're also fighting the Klingons, but in a 24th century galaxy class when things are
yeah.
mostly peaceful with the Klingons.
Yes.
There's not a neutral zone in the
Yeah.
24th century,
This
but
this version of the test is very much a pre-undiscovered country version of the test, and yet the computer automatically sets it on a Galaxy class starship, which makes me wonder where who put this together, who put together a setup. I mean, the computer apparently randomizes who showed up because it was asked to do that. So the fact that the crew doesn't make sense, it makes sense weirdly, but the combination of a Galaxy class with it being a 23rd century situation with the Klingons, instead of just say swapping out the Romulans, or swapping the Klingons for Romulans or something, which would have made it perfectly up to date for the 24th century, especially since Romulans were always the ones with the neutral zone in the first place. But yeah,
yeah,
it was
well,
weird.
Tuvok, he doesn't call it the Kobayashi Maru by name,
Yeah.
but Tuvok does run those Maquis slackers in the Voyager season 1 finale episode Learning Curve.
Yeah.
He runs them through a bunch of drills and tutorials and stuff, and they do a simulation on the bridge, and there it was a Romulan warbird that is attacking them in a very almost identical scenario as what we
Yeah.
see in the opening of Wrath of Khan or Star Trek '09, I guess.
Okay. So yeah, that's kind of I know in the I know in the novels I think they swapped in Romulans as well, but I'd forgotten about that Voyager episode. So that's a little weird. They keep saying Klingon battle cruisers and then showing us birds of
Birds of
prey,
prey.
which I guess they're supposed to be those monstrous 600-meter long Cavort class bird of preys or something, and we're
Or
just
there might be some, Katingas off the port side of the ship or something, and we're never looking at the view screen
yeah.
whenever they're on the view screen. Or
I was wondering what was going on with that, and the only answer I could come up with is we have a crashed bird of prey earlier in the series, and maybe they didn't want to build a whole new bird of Klingon ship
yeah,
model. They just
reuse the same CGI model.
though it could
They're
have been
also like more iconic. I mean, I actually prefer the Katingas and the D7 type design, but
yeah.
I think most people when they think Klingon ship, because of the movies and the Berman era, they think of Birds of Prey. And
Yes, but since they're replicating a test that we've seen, and they've always been D7s in two different timelines, or something very close to a D7 in both timelines, it feels weird that they're not doing some sort of D7-ish looking thing out there.
and like you said, they did already create the CGI model. They also bring back the Mek'leth that they modeled for those
Oh,
earlier episodes. Uh, when we actually beam over to the Klingon bridge. But yeah, even then, like a lot of the stuff, it is kind of silly. I mean, it's easy to hand wave. It is all just a computer simulation. It is all basically a video game. So the funny thing to me was also Odo when he first shows up, because it's cool when you see Uhura because you're just like, oh my god, who are we gonna get next? It could be anybody. And
yeah.
then when it was Odo and he does the harumph noise that he makes, it's like classic Odo. And just after losing Renee only a couple of years ago, and our live audience, Pastel Pirate, also enjoyed that moment. It looks like she said they got Odo's scowl down pretty well. Yeah,
To
I
be
these
fair,
characters translated the animation
yeah,
pretty well.
Odo's face always looked like kind of a CGI simplified face. So
Yeah,
if you can't get Odo right, what can you do?
it feels very like Clone Wars to me, like when they would take actors that we knew from Star Wars movies and have to translate them to their animation style, and then we would see someone like Samuel L. Jackson have his face uh, replicated in their Clone Wars animation. So
Yeah. I noticed the bridge It's a Galaxy class bridge, but they clearly tweaked the scale factor a bit to make it bigger,
No, I think they're just.
significantly.
I think these guys are just really short. Because
No, no, just the proportions are definitely enlarged beyond these guys just being
okay,
short.
because I noticed
But
like they only come up to like Janeway's chest. Like
yeah,
she's a good bit taller than both of them.
yeah. No, you're right. That's some of it. I think that's why it hit me so hard is because I don't tend to think of them as being as short as they actually are. And they blew up the bridge, and the 2 punch of that seemed like almost felt like there was a scale problem. Like my first thought was that the holodeck was malfunctioning somehow. But I think they just wanted to make it look like if we made the next generation today, this is how we would have done the bridge. It would have been really big
Yeah,
because
I
that's how
think
they are.
I I think they might have stretched it out from left to right a little bit to make it look better in a 16:9
Yeah.
aspect ratio as compared to 4:3. One of the reasons why they blew up the Enterprise D in Generations was because everything had been designed for that TV show. Why they blew it up in Generations is because everything had been designed for the Next Generation show to be presented on a 4:3 aspect ratio on TV, and then when they started doing movies, everything had to be in widescreen. That's
Yeah.
why the Enterprise D exterior, it's more of a boxy little thing, whereas the Enterprise E, that first shot we see of it in First Contact, it's long and stretched out from left to right. Um, but it
I
looked
don't
cool.
know.
The
I feel
lighting
like
looked good.
yeah, no, it looked beautiful, and it's kind of like how the stuff they did in Rogue One, where it was how we remember it rather than how it actually
Hmm.
was. That was their philosophy, and that's I think a little touch of this here. It's as impressive as it was supposed to be, rather than a completely literal recreation of the bridge set, and I like it. I approve. I think that's a great idea. I'd honestly, if they were going to rebuild the set for the show, for some show for live action, I'd actually like them to make it a little bit bigger and more impressive. Just make it look like so you don't immediately notice they've changed anything, but bigger. Yeah,
It was weird seeing Uhura and Spock on the Galaxy class bridge, and it was weird seeing Odo there. Um, and this is actually supposed to be the Enterprise D. Some of the displays say Enterprise on them, but uh, yeah, Dal does terrible. His score that he gets after lasting only, I think it's only a few seconds. I don't even know if he lasted a full minute in there. It went by really quick, but he
I
came
think
out
they
with a
argued for more than a minute, but didn't they?
what I'm talking about like from like the time like they actually approached the ship and
Yeah.
then
I think the test started the moment he got the distress signal, but and all of that arguing is why his scores are
mm,
so low. But
yeah, he had a 3% uh, captain assessment score, 2% in leadership, 0.1% in judgment.
yeah, as he deserves.
But he,
Well, do we know these people? No, then fuck them.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not
no,
gonna.
that's terrible judgment.
It's terrible judgment. Uh,
But yeah, he doesn't quit. There's countless more attempts that he runs through. We get this montage of failure that all result in disaster every time. Which that is how the Kobayashi Maru works. But of course, he doesn't know that. And if you're new to Star Trek watching this, you wouldn't know that either. But he does seem to eventually come super close to actually winning, and then botches it at the last minute. I think something else would have came along and ruined it
yeah,
for him. But
I think in the novels they just keep dropping Klingon
yeah,
ships on you until you die. That you
yeah.
can't beat it because it just keeps
I
hitting
was
you with
waiting
that.
for the next one to decloak any minute, but
Yeah,
we finally reached that point where Spock gives him some words of wisdom and tells him what it means to be a captain. He deploys one of his classic catchphrases: "The good of the many outweighs the good of the few." And then Dal learns from the computer that yeah, there was no way to win. It was about learning how to accept failure and defeat.
hmm.
I do also have to say that uh, one of the weird things is that the Klingons all kind of looked like the Worf style forehead to me. They all looked like Sons of Moog, like the
Uh,
same ridge style as Worf or Kern. But
Hmm.
It's just I like they don't seem that menacing. They look kind of friendly. That's like, oh, if you look like Worf, you're probably a good guy, right?
I guess I mean you're right. Now that I look at it, yeah, they do all seem to have Moog family head ridges, but I never thought of them as particularly
Mhm.
friendly. I mean, I
I mean, they are
love
blowing up the Enterprise.
yeah, I love Pog just jumping on whoever's arguing side. He just switches sides back
Oh
and
yeah,
forth over and over, and then his mutiny, mutiny,
mutiny,
mutiny,
mutiny. Yeah, yeah, that was awesome. Let's do that. But he gets kicked out. I like the moment where Dal like finally has had enough and he kicks him out, and then he says computer arch. Okay, that was cool. Good use of continuity there. But then when he says, computer, give me another engineer, and that's when we get the CGI Scotty, who, for whatever reason, the CGI model of Scotty, I thought he looked like the best out of Uhura looked really good, I think Scotty, just for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the uniform they gave him. They actually gave him a monster. He has his captain bars. He's like, uh, full respect to Scotty. Give him like the most prestigious look out of all of them.
yeah. Maybe at some point you got to pick how they recorded, or yeah, I mean if you were still alive I suppose, but when holodecks came around you get to pick your default appearance. um so I are we okay with Dahl being all racist to the holograms?
Um, Jellyman, Pointy Ear. Yeah, those are the nicknames he gives them. Uhura's earpiece. Odo's Jellyman. Spock is Pointy Ears, and Scotty is Mustache.
Yeah, things could have gone so much worse with O'Hara. I'm glad. I guess we stuck with the earpiece. But yeah, I was like, is that really? I guess, I mean, they're not real people and he's alone on the holodeck. So maybe, but it
I don't
also
know
felt,
if I don't know if there's anything wrong calling someone Mustache, but I guess maybe like Pointy
yeah.
Ears. Jellyman, I don't know if that actually sounds bad. Like that's one of these scenarios. Odo was doing some weird shape shifting or stretched or something. Like
Yeah.
did something to look like he's made out of jelly.
So it's just yeah, I don't know if I necessarily had a problem with it. Dahl's not supposed to be a perfect person and he knows they're not real people. Oh yeah, I love this bit where they all hide behind the console.
Yeah,
Oh my
they're hiding
gosh.
behind Worf Station. And Brian, let me ask, because I know like you've watched all these episodes multiple times that they're pulling this recorded dialogue from. Were you ever distracted by trying to figure out what episode, what lines of dialogue were like? Some of them, I just caught right off the bat. And actually, before you answer that, I just want to tell you, like, I was going to try to find the dialogue from like I considered it. I was like, should I actually try to find where every line of dialogue came from? And the first thing that Odo says is harumph, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to find that harumph. I'm going to have to listen to like every use of it and try to figure out like which is like no. But some people have figured it out. I saw on trekcore.com. So if you want a list of it, go to Trekcore. They have it.
There are nerds who will do this for you. I just that would have been my response if you'd asked me that at the time. Just wait, someone else will do all the work for you.
But what was your experience hearing all of that stuff?
I mean, on one hand, a lot of the lines I could, even if I can't remember the specific episode, I can remember that line. I remember hearing that line, and there were places, but I thought, they're not trying to say this is the real Spock. They're trying to say this is a recording of Spock, or this is a simulation based on recordings. So the idea that it speaks with all these pre-recorded kind of phrases actually fit really well in this context. So if they brought one of these characters back for real using this trick, I think it would have to be in a very limited capacity. But because it's on the holodeck, the artificiality of it all, I was able to head canon that these are all the reports and recordings from the bridge, that the computer is just playing those recordings when appropriate, from all the bits of dialogue and words they've got recorded of these people, and probably only fabricating a sentence when it needs to. So yeah, I'm kind of down with it. But yeah, I was very aware of the artificiality the whole way through, but I can't say wasn't happy. I was happy and enjoying it, even though I could see the strings. So yeah, I don't. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, for me, it got like a little distracting when I also noticed like a change in quality. Like some of the TOS dialogue, you could tell it wasn't recorded in as high as of quality as say like Odo's dialogue from the 90s.
Or
Or
sometimes
the Gates McFadden stuff, which was all new. Like she
yeah,
actually, obviously, they needed someone to do that, and
yeah. I was wondering at first why have Crusher on the bridge? Oh, because she's the actress or actor rather who said yes when they called around and said we need to get somebody on the bridge to be able to say whatever we need them to say.
But
And
originally, when they first wrote this, back in 2019, uh, Renee was still alive, and they were expecting to get him in the studio and record new dialogue as Odo.
okay, huh?
Um, so yeah, sadly, like he didn't get that opportunity to return back because that would have been a real treat
It would have
to
been,
have
yeah,
him back as Odo.
yeah, yeah. That's that would have been cool to get
But I thought what they used with him
one
worked.
more performance out of him. So
The Odo dialogue that they pieced together, I thought actually well, the Scotty stuff worked really well too. It's only a couple times with Uhura and Spock where it kind of felt like, oh yeah, they are just piecing stuff together, and some of it is
mm,
a little bit more iconic dialogue. Like I remember like the exact moment of the exact episode when it was said.
yeah.
Um,
Sometimes they had stuff recorded in slightly different situations, and then they smash them together into one paragraph or whatever
mhm.
of text of speech, and you can tell that it's both sound like Spock, but that's definitely sounds like Spock in a different recording situation and mood than this did. But and if they're too close, if the lines are too close together, it feels like he's kind of zigzagging around in a way that using this sort of using this stuff is all tends to sound when you're recycling dialogue from some other situations or lots of other situations.
Well, it was near the end when Spock gives his big speech at the end, and again, like I had a
Yeah,
lot of fun with all this stuff. I liked seeing it. I loved hearing Nimoy as Spock again.
yeah,
But yeah, when it is supposed to be like the big climactic moment for this storyline in the episode, and yeah, he so clearly went from, oh, that's dialogue from The Enemy Within on the original series. Oh, that's dialogue from Unification Part 2 on the Next Generation. Oh, that's dialogue from Star Trek '09. And it
yeah,
was just like three sentences back to back to back.
yeah,
Yeah, it is kind of a bumpy ride, but I loved the idea. I loved the theme. I loved the heart that went into all of that. I love that Spock is the one teaching the character because Spock is the one who taught us when we were kids about the good of the many outweighing the good of the few. So
yeah,
I accept it.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
just look the other way and give him a pass and accept it. And again, it is
yeah,
all artificial, so maybe it is a little wonky in the
yeah.
holodeck.
I mean, it's like when they get the David Tennant to show up in Day of the Doctor, and he looks a little older than he probably should, but
Yeah.
whatever. We're just glad to have David Tennant back for one more hurrah. So, yeah, we I'm willing to overlook it. Yeah, I feel it was a very successful experiment. I wouldn't want to see them do this every episode, but it was great to see this done. And I love Spock just pinching everybody. That was amazing. I've always wanted to see something like that where everyone's doing a big aggressive bombastic cinematic fighting and Spock is just repeatedly calmly doing minimal movement pinching
Which is how
everybody.
Nimoy wanted Spock to be. Nimoy was
Yeah,
insistent Spock was an intellectual. He's not an action hero.
yeah,
Unless he's like high on spores and trying to
yeah,
fight Kirk or something like that,
yeah,
or going into Pon farr. But normal Spock under normal conditions, yeah, he will just take people down calmly with the Vulcan nerve pinch. That was the entire reason why that was
yeah.
created.
But
So
they I liked how they highlight that there's chaos, there's shouting, there's smoke, there's all
Hmm.
the laser beams.
AC/DC playing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Dow
Spock
doesn't
just
use
calmly,
Beastie Boys. He uses AC/DC.
and that's how we know he's not captain material yet. He's got a ways to go. He has to get up to Beastie Boys.
That was the song Thunderstruck, but it was like a cheap cover that only had the music. It's like they didn't even shell out to buy like the the rights to the actual song. I don't know, but that might have been like a little distracting if you had like the dialogue blasting in there. And,
I had to have somebody tell me that that was an actual song and not
oh
just
yeah.
some random thing they put in there. But
Well, all
it was,
AC/DC songs sound alike, so if you
yeah.
heard one, you've heard them all. But
I did like the only way out is chaos. I was like, oh, this guy is so ready for Doctor Who, but it just such a wonderful and it is kind of that Captain Kirk school of computer repair mentality where how do you beat the perfectly logical machine? You do something wildly illogical. So even though it didn't really work per se exactly, but I like the energy behind it. So
and it
um
it did again feel like playing a video game to me when he gets the Kobayashi Maru distress call again, and he's like, yeah, we know Kobayashi Maru. I was like, oh yeah, like he's watched this cutscene a number of times because he's keeps having to replay the same part of a video
looking
game.
around for the space bar.
Yeah, yeah. How do I skip cutscene?
Yeah. The the first half of Spock's advice was clearly there because they had all this good Leonard Nimoy dialogue that they thought would fit, but Spock's basically advising him, you can't show any weakness. You have to seem perfect. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, self-confidence in front of other people is not Dahl's problem. This man is wildly overconfident and refuses to take advice from other people. This is totally the wrong advice to give him. It's like you're just going to make him worse. But then we get a little more focused on trying to do what's best for the crew rather than what's best for you, which that was
Which he
good
does
material.
need to learn. And
Yes.
that's the conflict he's having at the beginning of the episode with the rest of the kids. When they want to go to the Federation, he doesn't. And he's like, "Oh, well, yeah, maybe I need to, you know, do what's good for the group and not just what I want to do for myself."
Yeah. So, and I think the first stuff was only there because they had a bunch of good Spock dialogue to,
Yeah, from the enemy within. And that
yeah.
does remind me, I guess the last thing I have to say on the Kobayashi Maru stuff, but uh Aaron Waltke said that the way that he found all this dialogue, he did, rewatch a lot of episodes and actually read through some scripts, but he used an algorithm that was going and looking through scripts for certain characters saying certain keywords, and he pulled a lot of stuff that way with computer software, which I think is how the folks over at TrekCore, not to undermine the quick work that they did, but I think that might have been how they were able to figure out what
Yeah.
episodes all this came from so quickly.
Yeah, well, when I see when they get all the Star Trek characters in a YouTube video to sing a song together, I think what you just do is you take all the episode scripts off the internet, which are their transcripts online, and put them all into one document. And you just type in the words you want and hit search and find the one you want to use. It certainly takes time, but it's certainly way faster than memorizing the entire or rewatching the entire show. So, but I enjoyed it.
Oh, and I did laugh. I did laugh out loud when Dal high fived Spock's Vulcan hand jive. Like,
I didn't know why Spock said "live long and prosper" at that point. That was the one point where it felt like we're just gratuitously recycling dialogue rather than it makes some sort of sense in this story. But I did like his high five, so I'm torn on that moment.
yeah, well, yeah, I thought the live long and prosper was a little like, does this hologram know that this guy's about to like end the program? But yeah, it's like they wanted that to be like Nimoy's last words in the episode.
Yeah. So
It is what it is. But let's go ahead and talk about our B story. If you want to tell us what's going on in sickbay with the rest of the crew.
all right. Zero finishes patching up Gwyn in sickbay, and we see a flashback to her creation at Tars Lamora. Very intriguing flashback, I might add.
Yeah, which I like that. It gave the episode some meat. Seen 17 years ago, the year 2366, really adds to the mysteries of the show because that is season 3 of Next Generation, and we know that, okay, so as early as back then, the Diviner was looking for the Protostar, but later we see Chakotay as captaining the Protostar. Uh, I said before how our friend Aaron Harvey had speculated there would be time travel involved, and the Protostar is actually from the future. I'm convinced that's the case now.
I, it's certainly very weird. It's certainly going to take a very weird sequence of events to explain all of this. So, yeah, time travel is as plausible as anything at this stage because, yeah, either they're ignoring large hunks of continuity, which seems really unlikely, or there's something very strange going on with this storyline. And I mean, obviously, I don't think they're trying to say that before Chakotay joined the Maquis, he was in captain of the Protostar, right? They're not trying to
Yeah.
say that. I mean, they didn't even bother. They didn't put him in the uniform for 2366 in that clip that we see of Chakotay.
Yeah, it kind of looks like in some of that footage, it kind of looked like he had some gray in his hair. So,
Yeah.
I
So,
I think that Protostar ship is from the future. They're currently in the year 2383.
right? Yes.
I think it's only like 10 or 20 years max into the future, though. Like, it might be somewhere like Star Trek Picard in between the Picard flashbacks and the Picard season 1. I think it might be like somewhere
Yeah.
in like that time period.
Yeah, well, that would be like 10 years. If you're 20 years, I
Right.
think you're after Picard. But
Yeah, you would be after Picard by 4 years.
yeah.
But
So yeah, it does. It feels like time at this point. It feels like time travel would be the least convoluted
yeah,
way to explain all of this.
yeah, I think it's a
Because
safe bet at this point.
because yeah, the ship looks so much more advanced than it probably should in 2383, and yeah, so yeah, it was intriguing to finally get some details on that dating and stuff, and to get a star date. Woohoo, star dates.
Yes.
Yeah. So we learned some other cool, fun stuff. I love the line about "you're perfectly fine except for your low serotonin levels."
Oh yeah, with Zero and Gwyn and
That's pretty good for a children's show to get their science. That's more right. That science is more on point than a lot of live action Star Trek.
Zero also reveals that he had a Medusan hive mind he was connected to, and that the diviner pulled him from that. So does he not remember things from? Because the Medusans knew all about the Federation. They would know about Starfleet and stuff. Does he like not get to have access to all that knowledge now that he's separated from the hive mind? It's the opposite of Seven of Nine. She got pulled out of the collective, and they actually say in one episode, like, you're probably the smartest human being who's ever existed because you remember all this stuff from being in the Borg collective.
I mean, all the other humans that are in the collective too, but yes, but yes, yeah, no, I maybe if you can always look it up in Google, you don't store it in your own brain, kind of logic.
Yeah.
It was, that since Zero never personally interacted with the Federation, or directly or interacted with somebody who told them personally told them about the Federation, it was just something that was there to look up, or maybe Zero was a wee little baby, just a spark in their daddy's eye.
Yeah, we don't know, I guess, how Medusans mature or how old Zero is or how they grow up. We do know how Gwyn grows up, though. We learned that she was a clone of her dad, which I've seen this done in fiction before. Like, the one that stands out to me is Wolverine from Marvel Comics. There's a clone of him, X-23. They do a version of it in the movie Logan, where I was like, oh, we made a clone of you, except a girl. And like, That's not how like cloning or DNA
Well,
works, but
honestly, all you have to do is repeat pull that Y
two
chromosome out
X's.
and replete it with one of the X's.
Okay,
Now, cloning a woman and turning them into a man is much trickier because
because you need a Y
you
chromosome.
need to go get that Y chromosome from somebody else. So it's not quite a perfect clone
Okay.
in that. But
I thought
so
you would
yeah,
need a different X chromosome, but okay, that makes sense then. And I mean, it is alien DNA, the Nukot
yeah.
species. We don't know how they work. I did notice a comment about this though in our live audience from Jill47, who was asking if Gwyn, matured 17 years ago, and I actually saw Aaron Waltke talk about this. He said like, no, Gwyn ages normally like a human. There's actually a time cut within the flashback when we cut from the fetus to cut to her as a big kid with her hand on the tube that her dad is in. That's actually passage of time has taken place between those two shots.
I thought, well, it's really odd to just does she know everything in this flashback? Because she's not even she's just a gleam in Daddy's eye at the beginning of this flashback, so we're not seeing her remembering stuff unless
Right.
somebody's given her an upload of memories from before she was, gestated.
Right. I think this is
Uh,
just for the audience to see. I don't think it's actually her memory.
Yeah, just and by the way, we're going to cut away like I don't know. This felt like the sort of thing that should be attached to a shot of the diviner sitting in his captain's chair or rumbling evil thoughts about our heroes, and then he gets wistful and looks off into space, and then we get this flashback. Rather than having it stuck in the middle of this episode like this. But I liked the flashback and I liked the stuff I learned about it. I just felt weird that it was kind of stuffed in here and no one's remembering it. But yeah, it was also Dreadnought. Diviner asks,
Like
basically
he needed
asks,
his help.
yep. Yeah. He asks him, would you do this for me rather than just make me a clone? He's kind of like, oh, I'm going to need to negotiate with this guy to get this to happen, which changes the power play. I just
Yeah,
assumed Dreadnought was his minion,
subservient,
basically.
but he's
Yeah.
not. But that's how we've been reading it all along. And Dreadnought mentions the Order. We can't defy the Order. And I don't know who the Order is, but it sounds like the Diviner has his own masters, and there's a higher power that that Dreadnought, I guess, views as having more authority than even the Diviner. And if they say don't do something, he's not going to do it, even if the Diviner tells him to, and unless
We're
the
going to
Diviner can talk him into it.
The diviner's going to be on the side of the angels by the end of this show, isn't he? They're all going to be fighting the Order and Dreadnought. That's where this is
Oh, and
headed.
then Dreadnought is going to be like the true believer. He's going to be the loyalist, and
Yeah. The diviner just wants his
he's
race
he's
back.
going to do it. He's going to do a Darth Vader sacrifice for Gwyn,
Yeah,
and
probably.
and die, but she forgives him. It's like, I've seen it all before.
I hope he switches sides and gets to hang out and help them a while rather than switches sides and then dies immediately, because you're right, that would be very Darth Vader.
I mean, they are investing a lot of screen time in these baddies. We see the Diviner and Dreadnought for at least one scene in every episode, which I wasn't expecting them to do that. It's kind of like almost like Disco season 1, where it keeps cutting back to the Klingons, but even more consistent than that with every episode.
Yeah. If they'd stuck this bit at the beginning, this flashback at the beginning, it would have felt very Picard. Remember how Picard opened every episode with some sort of weird flashbacky thing or something?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think all but one episode of Star Trek Picard opened with a flashback.
Yeah, so sticking this in the front would have at least made it feel like, well, they're doing what that other Star Trek show did.
Mm.
Uh,
But yeah, I like seeing it. We do learn a little bit more about the Diviner, but like I said at the top of the show, it also raises more questions. What is the Order? Why does he have like this bad health? Why is he the last of his species? Him and Gwyn. Why is the
I
Protostar his solution?
If the Protostar can accidentally travel through time, then maybe that's why he wants it, is to go back in time and save his people. That would make
I was
sense.
thinking that too.
Yeah.
Or use the power source to like revive their home world or bring it back or something.
Yeah.
But speaking of these mysteries and trying to figure out what's going on, that's exactly what Gwyn and Zero are doing when they try to piece together why the Diviner has been seeking the Protostar, and they discover that Janeway has classified memories that she does not have access to. But Gwyn is able to decrypt files that they find that have been coded in her native language, the language of Solemn, which I'm told is the name of the Vodna Akot homeworld, but also the name of their primary language. So the fact that this ship has data that's coded in her language, that makes me think that either her or the Diviner at some point in the future coded this on the ship, and then it went back in time, and the Diviner's looking for it, or something like that. Or maybe like maybe he knows the ship has information from the future, and that's why he's trying to grab it. It does feel
Yeah.
kind of like Discovery Sphere data when they're like, "Oh, it's going to take us months to look through all of this," and they can use this as a plot generator. They get data on this one thing over here, and so they go to look at it, or
Yeah.
they're able to use it to solve a problem at some other point. Something like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
What do you
do
think of
admit,
that?
yeah, I no, I'm interested. I don't quite know how all these puzzle pieces are going to fit together, so it's hard for me to judge. But yeah, there's definitely some questions there. I thought it was weird that it took Hollow Janeway so long to realize the data in her head is classified.
That's missing.
Um, because yeah, it's not missing, it's there, it's just
Oh yeah.
locked under some sort of classification, but she doesn't immediately realize that. And it could be bad writing, um or what if Captain Chakotay, in a moment of desperation, as the bad guys are flooding in, or as the escape pod speeds away, says, "Computer, classify all all blah, sorry. You shut up. Computer, classify all information related to the proto warp drive." And the computer on the Protostar just goes through and locks everything that's related to it, including the ship's mission, because the ship's mission was to try out test the proto drive. So it gets locked and all, but it's not a carefully planned classification. It's just one of those, the computer just goes through and sweeps through and does everything. Anything that's remotely related gets classified, and that's why it's all kind of a mess, and Janeway has holes and stuff, because it wasn't a properly subscribed set up protocol, but just some emergency command.
Yeah,
that
last minute. Because we know
Yeah.
that the ship was boarded. There was like imminent danger in that
Yeah.
little bit of holographic Chakotay recording that we see at the end. And even that's
Yeah.
kind of like jumbled, and we don't hear everything real clearly what's going on. The only thing that doesn't explain though is why is it coded in the language of the Vada Akot people?
Yeah,
Because
there's more to this than just what I've said. There were
yeah,
some more steps involved, but that could be part of the puzzle. Is if you just tell the computer, an AI computer, to do something like that, but don't give it any parameters, it'll kind of make a mess of it. And maybe even some of Janeway's slightly odd behavior could be caused by classification glitches related to this, to whatever happened in the past. So like her weird comment about, I mean, it was funny, but I also doesn't really make it. I need some coffee before you mess with my head, you know? But yeah, I like the idea of that could be what happened, that there's some big disaster, and they wanted to keep the technology of the Protostar somehow as
or
locked down as possible, prime directive and all that.
they might have like a future version of Gwyn, like is like there with him with Chakotay on the Protostar or something. Uh, because she says that the Vodnakot has never had contact with Starfleet, so they shouldn't have my language on their ship. But maybe like she grows up and is then working with Chakotay on the ship in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
that's that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because yeah, it's not real obvious what the answer is going to be. The time travel thing I think is obvious, but the classified data, the language of Solemn being used to code secrets on the ship, that's
yeah.
still a pretty big mystery.
It sounds like they have it all worked out though, because they wouldn't be I wouldn't think they'd drop weird clues like
Yeah.
this unless it all made sense from
But
the
yeah, they
writers.
they were writing this 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, I guess now, because they
I suppose.
it's been a while.
Yeah, it raises a question of this being aimed at kids solidly. How complicated of a time travel story can you do? And obviously, Steve Moffat wrote Doctor Who, which is heavily designed to very strongly to be kid friendly, and they did some pretty
And time travel
complex.
friendly.
Yeah, they did some pretty complicated plots with time travel in that. I'm just wondering, the sort of complex stuff that you can do for when you're aiming at young adults and adults for time travel is maybe how much of that is going to be understandable to a younger kid, depending on how complicated you make it. So I don't even know what the answer to that question is. Kids these days have grown up watching Groundhog Day and stuff. This stuff might all be a lot more.
Yeah.
It might be much more old hat and obvious to kids of this generation than it was when I was growing up. And the weirdest thing I saw was like, City on the Edge of Forever or something.
I remember, seeing Back to the Future when I was really young.
Yeah.
I watched the first one around the time that parts 2 and 3 were coming out in theaters,
Yeah.
and I was able to follow it. I think, or I don't know. Maybe that's why like I understood time travel because I watched Back to the Future when I was young enough that it just my brain adapted to understand that type of story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm intrigued. I like that it's not just stringing us along, that it is explaining some things to us, but also giving us like new hooks to ponder and to keep watching week to week and see what will happen. And so I'm enjoying the ride thus far with this the larger story of the mysteries of the Diviner and the Protostar.
And it gives us a really solid cliffhanger. I'm like, oh fuck, I want to know what
Yeah.
happens next. You're really.
Yeah. But I mean, that means we're going to
Very
get, I mean, they're going to have to pick up on this next week, so at least there's going to have to be like a conversation about Janeway trying to figure out, like we need to solve this. I think this might determine where they go next. I'm not really sure where you go from here as far as like their actual physical location in the Gamma Quadrant. There are fun things to play around with in the Gamma Quadrant. It might be nice to see what the Dominion is up to. I mean, it's not going to be nice for anyone bumping into them, but it might be fun for the audience to see that. I think it'd be really cool. Like, okay, no surprise that the big Deep Space Nine fan is going to be the guy who says this, but if they go through the Bajoran wormhole and actually visit the station, I just want to go back to Deep Space Nine. One of these shows. We have 5 shows. Somebody, please. I don't care if I go. I don't care if I go there on the Protostar. I don't care if I go there on the La Serena. I don't care if I go there on the Cerritos. I just really want to go back to Deep Space Nine.
We got a flashback in Lower Decks, but yeah, I think one of the things I realized by making the drive this stupid fast is that they can basically drop these kids into any environment Star Trek environment that exists in 2383. So if they just want to have them show up on Vulcan and have some quick adventure, and then they, for whatever reasons, jump on and yank the drive and jump away and end up back in the Gamma Quadrant, they can do that. You have to have enough rationalization as to why the Federation doesn't stop them and say, we want our ship back. But it might even be a ship from the future, so the Starfleet might not even realize they should be asking for it back. So yeah, you can drop them in on the Dominion, you can drop them in on the Kazon, you can drop them in on Vulcan, on Andoria, as long as you're careful with why, come up with a good excuse why they don't get stuck there, but have to keep moving. Maybe they're being chased by the Diviner. You can have.
Well, he's gonna have a hard time catching them now.
Yeah.
So yeah, how's he going to continue to be a threat if they're so far away? What I think will happen, Brian, is that the Diviner has Chakotay captured. and they're gonna have to go rescue him, and they're gonna have to go face off. They're gonna go back to the Diviner.
Yeah. Or Gwen says, they get to the point where we need the MacGuffin, and Gwen says, I
Oh
know
yeah.
where we can get the MacGuffin. It's back on my
Or
father's
they
ship.
need that
Dun, dun,
those
dun.
crystals, the chimerium,
Yeah,
which
something.
we do see that they have some of that on the ship. Is the I guess the C story of the episode, which is not much to talk about at all, but Rock Talk does see Murph. She's worried that he's eating the chimerium, but no, he's eating photon grenades, which are a thing in Star Trek. Admiral Layton in season 4, when he tried to have that coup and take over Earth, he's talking about like, oh yeah, we need like some photon grenades, and some aliens have used photon grenades over the years. I think.
Yeah, they the thing that was odd is when we've seen them used, they were a stun weapon. And here they talk about them as if they're some sort of destructive weapon. Here the dialogue clearly indicates they're just assuming they're like a photon torpedo, a photon
Yeah.
warhead. Because gamma rays are what you get when you mix matter and antimatter together, which would be a hell of a grenade, by the way. I mean, you better have a good throwing arm if you're
Yeah, it's
throwing
a high
antimatter.
yield grenade.
Yeah.
But it looked like a pretty high yield explosion in Murph. But
Yeah.
the reveal here is that like, oh no, he's actually fine, and Rock Talk concluding that perhaps he is indestructible, and we get a cute little fart joke to make the kids get a cheap laugh out of it. But it is kind of dumb and silly, or cute depending on how you interpret it. But I think that they are setting up Murph to do something crazy. Some
Yeah.
indestructible type. He's gonna go inside of a warp core, or a star is gonna go nova on him, or something. Something extreme is
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Yeah. I mean, Murph surviving the explosions, if they're photon grenades like the ones in Voyager that just stun you, but they make a big deal about, oh no, it's going to be really bad if one
Yeah.
goes off inside you. Also, Murph can stop gamma rays because, well, I guess Rock Talk's a rock. Maybe gamma rays don't bother her. Maybe that whole chamber is irradiated. But
Yeah, stay out of that cargo bay or whatever they're in.
But the gamma rays tend to have an incredibly be real physics. They're really good at punching through anything. You need a lot of concrete and lead to slow down gamma rays. So not only does it not bother Murph, but it also does not bother Rock Talk after it passes through Murph.
Yeah.
So
Or
apparently,
he might have absorbed it all.
yeah.
He's got a big appetite. He's always consuming stuff that looks like it should be inedible. So I don't know why he's like breaking down all this matter and energy, but I guess he needs it for something.
He's gonna just lay a bunch of eggs everywhere, and there's gonna be Murphs everywhere.
As bad as Tribbles.
Yeah.
I think that is everything I have for the episode breakdown. Brian, are there any final thoughts on this episode Kobayashi that you would like to get out there?
Just one. We have an episode on the holodeck with Spock, extensively with Spock, and they don't mention that Spock invented the Kobayashi Maru test. That felt weird to me. That's like having Kirk on, if they'd had Kirk on the bridge, a simulation Kirk show up for a bunch of dialogue, and he never mentioned, I'm the only one who beat this test.
It would have been cool to have that confirmed in the Prime timeline, because that's always been my assumption that it must have happened in Prime as well as Kelvin. That's why Spock said in the Wrath of Khan I'd never taken it before.
Yeah.
If I'm the guy who invented it, I've of course never had to take it myself. So I agree with you. They should have said that.
Yeah, you can make the argument they didn't mention it in Star Trek 2, but then nobody knew that in Star Trek 2.
Right.
So it's not quite as weird there as it is here, where we all know it.
In our audience, Stress Free K is saying Murph and Baby Grogu should enter a hot dog eating contest. That would be a cool crossover of it. Stress Free K, I think that Murph could eat Grogu.
Yeah.
He only eats like some frogs and some eggs. Murph eats fucking photon grenades, yeah, with gamma ray explosions.
Yeah, and not the stun photon grenades from Voyager, but actual photon warhead grenades.
Yeah. We might see him eat a photon torpedo before the end of the show. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and go into the Gorn egg section of the show because surprise, surprise, there's a lot in this episode. It's almost like a lower decks episode with all the stuff they crammed into this one. But these are all of our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections that I thought were worth bringing up. So I'm just gonna run through these as quick as I can. But starting off, we do see the game from the Next Generation episode. The game, the silly little cone and disc game, looks how it looked then. On the holodeck, there's a lot of stuff going on there. We see Andoria 4, which I assume is Andoria, or Andor as they called it on DS9. We guess the icy moon that the Andorians and the Anar are from. SETI Alpha 5 from Space Seed and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is apparently a place where you can go skydiving. And I like that when they have SETI Alpha 5 on the holographic menu, it even says Sector 25712, I think. That's the actual location of SETI Alpha 5 in The Wrath of Khan. But yeah, it has the same kind of, dusty,
What?
windy, bronze-colored skies.
Who wants to skydive in a place that's so cloudy that you can't see that you're miles above the surface? I mean, isn't that the whole point of skydiving? Is that you get the thrill of looking
The
down and
view.
being the view? Yeah, if that's,
Yeah.
you might
It's
as well
the
just be in one of those wind cylinder tunnels, that they blow you up in and just fill it with cloud fog, and
It's an odd experience. You have to skydive somewhere where you can't see like 5 feet in front of your face. I hadn't thought of
this
that.
is the garden spot of SETI Alpha 5. I can barely see it.
Also, we see the I guess recreation of planet Vulcan, and the mention of the Caliphate gladiatorial combat. And Janeway saying that Jane Eyre is one of her favorites. She had a kind of similar Victorian holodeck program on Voyager, the Janeway Lambda 1 program, which they kind of dropped quickly. It kind of felt like they were leading up to something and then kind of gave up on showing us that holodeck program, which I don't blame them because that's kind of weird and boring.
They even make fun of it kind of being
Yeah.
boring in this episode.
There's but I do want to mention that our little weird dude in there, Jane Eyre character parody. He calls Jankompog Mr. Poggy. I don't know why I thought that was weird, but it's like, oh yeah, this program's already like accessed all y'all's names in the ship's computer, and it's come up with like nicknames for all of you. That's interesting, but yeah, I guess what entertainment in the 24th century would it be this advanced? They name drop Deadwood, South Dakota. That was the setting of the Western program in A Fistful of Datas. Also, the Paxal Resort. Was that I guess kind of Hawaiian style, South Pacific style resort that Neelix came up with in Voyager season 3, that I think only appears in Voyager season 3, no other season. There's a shitload of Starfleet badges on display in the Kobayashi Maru scenario. They have pretty much everything. Like some things are from like alternate timelines, like All Good Things, or like the Future Imperfect badge that
Oh,
also shows up in
interesting.
parallels. They
Well,
have
that means that somehow those badges are part of
yeah,
Starfleet,
the are part of
then, yeah,
Starfleet. That's what I
or
concluded.
part of this timeline. Yeah, that's
There's also the
interesting.
29th century Time Fleet badge, which that one's a little harder to explain. But I guess
I
maybe
mean,
there's the Bureau of Temporal whatever that had to investigate Cisco.
yeah.
So maybe they have that as a badge in the
I
24th
mean,
century.
in my role-playing game, we literally that said a little bit before Nemesis. We literally had the Bureau of Temporal Investigations reorganized into Time Fleet.
Hmm.
Since we don't know when Time Fleet was founded, I decided shortly before Nemesis is when, and so that we do have that emblem. It actually makes sense in my game continuity. But you're right. From just watching the TV show, it feels weird.
There's TOS, there's the motion picture, there's the Star Trek 2 onward movies, there's Next Generation, there's Voyager, there's even Do you remember like the 30th anniversary logo, like that big oval with like the Delta in it from like 1996 that they used in like a lot of marketing and stuff? Um,
What that was right around the time of Generations.
it was right around the time of First Contact, but
Uh, uh,
it almost looks like a disco 32nd century comm
okay,
badge.
yeah, no, I like
Yeah,
that logo a lot. I've got it. I went out of my
that
way
thing
to get.
shows up. The thing that like Paramount promotional people came up with in the 90s shows up
Yeah,
here.
interesting.
So,
So that
but
that's an
nothing from
action.
Discovery. Even though they showed the actual Crossfield class ship a few episodes ago, they didn't have any of the Discovery badges, which I would have just gone ahead and thrown them in there because then I think you would have had everything.
I guess people have looked. You're sure the Discovery badges
Yeah.
aren't in that mess somewhere? Huh. Now that is weird that they would have such like not formerly non-canonical badges and yet not the disco badge.
But we get our five legacy characters, and there is the Kobayashi Maru herself is actually the design that was first used for a Star Trek novel book cover, and then later used in the Star Trek Online video game. It's very similar to the same shapes, although the Star Trek Online game has a Kobayashi Maru that's similar in design to like the Constitution refit or the Reliant, like that style of nacelles and saucer. The version that actually appears in this episode of Prodigy looks a little bit more TOS style with rounder nacelles and more TOS type design aesthetics. But yeah, they have made this design canon. At least it's canon for the simulations. That is what the Kobayashi Maru looks like. The specs that are up on screen are the exact same as what was used in the Wrath of Khan. The location of Gamma Hydra Section 10, which Gamma Hydra is also close to where the Battle of the Binary Stars was in Star Trek Discovery. But, same location in the neutral zone, or what would have been the neutral zone between Klingon space and Federation space. They mention J.T. Kirk. Makes sense his name would pop up somewhere as the one guy who beat the program. When Dow says, "Fire everything!" I think that was an intentional nod to Eric Bana's Nero in Star Trek '09.
Oh.
He has the almost exact same delivery of the same line, "Fire everything."
I
Uh,
had not caught that.
yeah, Dow also says, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." So he quotes both Khan and then one of the Khan knockoffs. Both get quoted. And the Klingon bridge, it's not quite a same copy of the motion picture bridge, but I think it's the most similar to that than anything that we've seen
Uh,
used for a bird of
no,
prey.
everything I saw of the Klingon bridge made it look to me like a whole lot like the standard Next Generation Deep Space Nine Klingon bridge set that they had. That was a rebuild or modification of the Star Trek Five set.
I think the stations are in different locations though. Is the captain's chair at the front like that?
Um, I mean, to some degree, there's
Okay.
space in front of it, but yeah, I've looked at maps and stuff for role playing games for when I had a game set on a Klingon bird of prey, and it looked a lot like that bridge. So I think that's just the standard, a CGI version of that DS9 bridge, the Rotaran or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause, I mean that was pretty different from how it looked in Star Trek 4.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
maybe it had like those piston things I really like from the motion picture.
yeah. I mean, I think the design of the bridge, they took this bridge, the motion picture bridge, and rebuilt it into the torpedo room. But then they
Right.
rebuilt the torpedo room into the Star Trek 3 bridge. Though very little of it doesn't really look, you can't really see the connection, but there are a few places where you can tell it's the same set.
But then here in the bridge that we see in this episode, it has that same little front part that's used as the that I think in
kind
the
of
motion picture was actually not physically part of the set, but something like they added in post.
yeah, it does look like it sure looks like it's added
And
in
you
post.
see that in here. And I
I think
thought
there's
that
something like that on the Bard of Prey bridge, but I
okay,
could be wrong.
I have to go back and double check because I thought
Yeah.
that had only appeared in
Mm.
the motion picture. but their view screen looked like the Bird of Prey view screen. So I thought it was kind of an amalgam bridge. I'll have to double check on that. Brian, you being the big Stardate enthusiast, we do get a Stardate for the flashback 43929.9. If you look that up, it means this takes place in between the TNG Season 3 episodes Sarek and Menage a Troy.
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, it's a December date. I would get just looking at it. I'd have to run it through a translator, but it's clearly late 2366. So,
and then the last thing I have, I just wanted to call attention to the dedication they put up at the end of the episode in memory of Rene Auberjonois, James Doohan, and Leonard Nimoy, who inspire us to go boldly. And that was kind of cool that they did that. I like that they were able to let us see those characters again and treat it with a lot of respect. And even though I think some of the dialogue came off as kind of clunky, it was still a lot of fun to experience.
Agreed.
But that's all I got. Starfleet Boy, if you're still in the chat, please let us know when your show is going to start. Starfleet Boy After Dark, and I will inform our live audience, people that are joining us tonight. But for everyone else, just want to say I had a lot of fun getting Prodigy back on the air. I'm actually digging Discovery a hell of a lot right now, but I like the variety of shows, and it feels like we can actually avoid franchise fatigue now by having all these radically different tones and all these different shows. And it was a lot of fun just revisiting these characters and being reminded of the things that I like about this show, and actually enhancing what I like about it and adding more to what I like. So I'm very excited to see the remaining 4 episodes that we're going to get for this block of Prodigy, and then it's going to be exciting to go back to Discovery after being kept away, being kept at bay, and having like Discovery withdrawals. Like I need to know what happens next. I need to know what's going on with Book and Burnham, and then getting to finish that season off with its remaining 6 episodes is going to be exciting as well. We're going to be covering all of it though. We're going to have content every Friday night discussing each episode each week. Same thing for Picard, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, everything else coming out this year. So lots to look forward to. But those of you joining us live tonight on Friday, Starfleet Boy has informed us that the Starfleet Boy After Dark show will start in 1 hour around 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. So if you want to hang out with us over there, I think we're going to be talking about the other Star franchise. Had a new episode of their Book of Fett show. And I don't know, maybe The Expanse or whatever those guys want to talk about. But for those of y'all that watch TV shows other than Star Trek, why do such a thing? I dabble with other stuff, but my heart will always remain in the world of Star Trek, and we will be back next week live 7 p.m. Central, Friday night. Until then, though... Oh, you got something to say, Brian?
Oh, just fortunately, like a Time Lord, I have 2 hearts, so I can love 2 shows.
Yes. They are Chicago Hope and Reno 911, right? Trying to think of like the 2 most different shows. I came up with like 2 shows that are like not relevant at all in the year 2020. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and sign off now. But until next week, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.